Hello once again and welcome to part 3 of my channel. The first thing I want to show you in this episode is the 2 documents that I found in my late brother David's belongings in 2015. I know he died in 2014, but I never actually looked in the boxes till after I'd moved into the house in 2015, November 2015. So it'll probably be more like 2016, early 2016, when I found these 2 documents after I'd fetched the boxes from my brother Ron's house. First of all, I'll show you the stamp album. Right, this is the stamp album. It's a 1950-52 stamp album. Got Ron's, it was Ron's stamp album. He's got his name on there and a date sort of thing. Of course, it's maps of the world sort of thing and stamps and God knows what. Anyway, in the back of this album are a couple of sketches. That's one. It's sort of a layout when I was sort of practicing, I suppose. That's 2. That's the original Wolfhead design that I created from the Pascal design. And this other thing on here is, I think it's probably Exeter Falcons or something I was probably messing around with, just scribbling as you do when you're a child. So that was one item, and the other item is this one. It's disintegrating now. I'm not going to take it out of the folder much more. It's a Cyril Cowell poster, and on the back of the poster are 4 designs. The first one is an elephant. You can notice the hexagons, the hexagon borders and the hexagon base of the design, which they use now. There's a snake, there's a cat, and last of all, I'll turn it over, we've got the wolf. Now, when I went to court, I asked the judge, I said, have you seen the original designs? He said no, so I passed him this design. He looked at it and he said, oh, there's a date on this design. And I'm thinking, where's the date? I could see it had got design ideas for exams, Peter Davis, but I couldn't see the date on there. Apparently, before that P. Davis on there is a date. Well, he looked at it and he says, oh, it's 1961-62. And he passed it over to the defence, and they was all in a muffling and a bit pissed off with the judge. And the judge says, it's an original design, it's an original drawing, this is, do you agree with it? And they went, yes, no, huffed and puffed a bit. So they agreed that this 1963 design that I did is original. So that outdates the 1979 design that this guy come forward and said he designed in 1979. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk to you about is this, is all the documentation that I've shown you in the past 2 episodes, the painting competition forms and all the other stuff, none of that was in existence or come to fruition until Ron and I visited the archives it'd be around about 2016, early 2016, and all that come from the archives. The only thing that I got to go on was the stamp album and the Cyril Cowell design with my designs on the back. That gave me a foundation to work from, and from that foundation, that's when I started, because I know now I've got evidence. After all these years, some evidence. Joe Brown and this picture of you, his record, had given me a picture of him, the wolf, and that's what started it. Now, starting with the research, the first thing I came across while I was doing the research at the archives in Wolverhampton is statement from a chap called Alex Broadhurst. Now, you can look at this on the internet if you want to, but this was part of my sort of research to find out if anybody knew where my wolf had come from, where my wolf head had come from. And he explains that he was a young kid at school and he loved the design and he used to put it on his satchel, and he grew up to be a designer. Ended up working for Apple in New York, and this is what he actually wrote. I'll push it on there so you can actually read it for yourselves if you want to, because you can freeze it and look at these sort of things. But what he actually said to finish off his blog was, ultimately, it would be fair to say that I admire the simplicity. I can't really claim any true, sincere modern philosophy. I just like well executed logos that appear effortless in their form, an apple for an apple, mouse ears for Disney, and train tracks for British Rail, and a wolf for wolves. To me, this isn't lazy. When executed well, it can still provide the appropriateness, differentiation, and whatever else might be required at that moment in time. It may not always be a great story, but it may not always hide something achingly clever in its negative space, but more often than not, it's better for it. And then he goes on to say, if anyone knows who designed the original badge, I'd love to hear from you. The fact it also tessellates perfectly can't be by chance. Right, let's just analyse that for a start off. If you look at this wolf head, you can tell it's a 60s design. It's not a 70s design, late 70s design. 70 years had gone since I designed that, and we'd gone through a psychedelic era with all these sort of drug addicts, and all the designs then become flowery and scribbly and groddly and what. So it's pretty obvious it wasn't a 1979 design. It's pretty obvious it was designed in the 50s and 60s, like the Mickey Mouse designs, like the Batman design, like my wolf head design. The other thing which he mentions about tessellation. Now, tessellation is sort of symmetry, balance in the design. Now, this guy who came to the court and said he designed in 1979, he said that he drew some lines, stuck them together on a piece of acetate paper, or it was, and produced the wolf head. Now, there's no tessellation in the design there. For a designer to turn around and say that, that's pretty ludicrous. It took some designing, believe me, it took some thinking out by me. I had the aid of the Pascal stuff, but that wasn't a complicated thing. It was just the 6 points on the conic, which I'll show you now. Right, now this is the Pascal formula. It's a mathematical formula, but it's nothing that interested me. When I had the punishment, I just went to the local library in Wolverhampton. It used to be opposite the Gormont. Can't remember the name of the street, but you could go up to Horsley Fields. That's where you get your comics, further on down there. And if you had an exam from school, you just go up to the library and just copy it word for word, and then produce it the next day or the next, whenever you've got to produce it, and the teacher would just rip it up in front of your face. So you never looked at the mathematical thing, but being like in geometrical drawings, the circle fascinated me, the 6 points on the circle where it touched, and I started looking at it and started experimenting with just 6 points on a circle. Of course, when I was in court, they brought it up that I knew nothing about the mathematical design. How could you possibly? It was nothing to do with mathematics. I got no interest in mathematics whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I was useless at mathematics. You're either good at something or you're bad at something. Maths I was bad at. Art I was good at. Right, the next thing. During my research, I came across this as well. It's a Brands of the World brochure. You can find this on the internet as well. It's there for you to see. but it's talking basically about the wolf head. Now, look what they say about the wolf head. This was in 2011. Look what they say about it. They're saying, designer unknown, contributor unknown. Nobody knew. Now, don't you think it's strange that this guy who come forward in 1979 at the courthouse, he only come forward in 2018, he was forced to come forward by somebody called Tony Bond. He wouldn't have done nothing about it, except somebody made him come get in touch with the solicitors. I think this Tony Bond got in touch with the solicitors, and then they piled down this Ian Jackson's house and sort of questioned him and questioned him and questioned him. Now, the strange thing about Ian Jackson is this. He said he'd got a design company for birds. I'll tell you all about it later on when I go through his witness statements. We'll all see the proof. To cut a long story short, he'd got a design company. Now, wouldn't you have thought that if he'd got a design company, which had got brochures going all over the world, designed for wouldn't you have thought that he would have advertised the fact that he designed the wolf head in 1979 and shouted it from the highest rooftops? Because, as the judge said, it's one of the finest recognisable logos in the world. Why did he actually keep it secret then? Why did he say nothing about it at all? Why did he have to be exposed and drawn out of the woodwork by this Tony Bond guy? Questions which need to be answered, which were never answered in court because they were never asked. Right. From this point on, when I found that stuff and I started doing research, I said to Ron, I'm going to try and get a solicitor to look at this. I'm going to do some original designs from my memory of the Pascal stuff. Of course, I could look at the Pascal stuff on the internet even now in these modern times. So it sort of helped me along and jogged me. And I remembered like the 6 points of the kind of sort of thing. And of course, you've got the sort of 50, 55, 60 years have gone. So it took a couple of while for my memory to come back. And eventually I got it sorted out. And I did some designs for some solicitors. It was basically to get some solicitors to listen to me. And this is the actual design, very similar design that I sent to the painting competition. And I also sent this one, which was another design with my motive, with my initials on it, which if you look at the skeleton drawings of the Pascal design, you'll see the circles which create that skeleton on my design. So those I produced for solicitors. Now these designs, they all come out different colours from my amateur printer from wherever I bought it from. And it was a point I brought up in court. They tried to say, well, they're all different colours, this is wrong, that's wrong, and I just said, look, I've got the cheapest printer in the world. When the ink starts running out, the colour changes. Anyway, went over the heads, went over the judge's head. He just flicked his hand at me. Anyway, we started the research, started to try and get a solicitor. The first thing I did, found a solicitor called Barker Brettel on the Birmingham, Hagley Road, Birmingham. Arranged for an interview with this Barker Brettel and got an interview with one of their junior solicitors and explained to her situation, told her all about it. And then after I told her all my information, she said, went out of the room, come back, she says, oh, we can't represent you because we actually represent Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, they could have said this before I actually divulged the information, but they let me go on, they let me spiel to them, let me tell them all my story, and then after, they then decided they were going to tell me what was what. In the meantime, because I then started gathering information, I said to Ron, my older brother, I think I'm going to register my design. Nobody's registered the design, it's obvious. I'm going to register it with the government. So I looked into the government sites and I registered my design. They said, well, there's a design similar to this. I said, yeah, but it's my design. I want to register it as my design. So they allowed me to register it. And it was only because I registered that design at that particular time I actually could carry on with this court case, because there's there's two laws called latches and they stop. The latches is a delay of time, bringing it to court through, you can't bring it to court through a delay of time for unreasonable behaviour. And estoppel is to stop you bringing it forward if they don't know about it. Well, let me tell you this, and Fawson probably don't even know this. When Fawson appeared on the scene to buy the club, this design of mine was in circulation as belonging to me. This Barker Battelle knew this, but they let Fawson go ahead and sign all the documents for the club. And I'm assuming, I'm not saying they did, because they could sort of come back to me and start threatening me or all this sort of thing. But I think that they never told Fawson about the dispute between the Wolfhead. If they had told Fawson about the dispute between the Wolfhead and me, they could have placed the stopper on it, and it wouldn't have cost Fawson a penny. Anyway, after they told me, this Barker Battelle told me that represented Walt, they tried to get me to look at other solicitors and on their part. And there was a seminar up the library at Birmingham Library, and I thought, okay, it was to learn you about copyright. And I thought, well, okay, it'd be a good thing for me to go and attend that seminar. So I went to the seminar in that time, and who should be running the seminar but some chap from Barker Battelle. He didn't tell me who he was, but he tried to prise information out of me about this Wolfhead. And I said, well, who are you? And because he never showed me his card. So who are you? He says, well, I come from Barker Battelle, sheepishly like. And I says, well, I don't want to say no more to you. I said, because you already know about this Wolfhead dispute, you're just trying to gain an advantage over me. And I sent him a letter. I'll show you the letter a bit later on, about the one I sent him about this particular scenario. I then ended up going to Manchester, London, company at Manchester, I forget the name, but there was Mishcom Deraya in London, and the barrister, I always remember it was the day Brexit happened, and the particular solicitor I was talking to was really livid about it. And we sat in his office, and Ron was goading him about it. He was getting a little bit angry. I had to tell him to shut up. This was about the Brexit thing. And he said, look, Pete, he says, I understand your situation. What you've got to do, you've got to get Wolverhampton Wanderers to High Court. And you've got to get them to divulge where they got the Wolfhead from. If you can prove that that Wolfhead belongs to you, you'll win the case. Well, that never happened, did it? So, my first thing that they said I'd got to do was get a barrister's opinion. Right, okay, do you know any barristers? Yeah, Robert Howe, which I mentioned in the first video. Now, he wanted £10,000 for a written estimation of the value of the case. I couldn't afford £10,000. Mishcom Deraya were quoting £400,000 to do the case. So that ended there and then. I kept looking around and looking around here, and eventually I come across Keystone Law and Lawrence Abramson. We talked for a while, we met in London, I showed him the documentation. He said, Pete, he says, you seem pretty genuine to me, let's give it a whirl. So that's how it all started.